Hey guys, welcome back. Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. Weather's getting real pretty. I know a lot of folks are wanting to get out and do some bass fishing, so I thought I'd come down to my local Bass Pro Shops and pick out a bass fishing rig and kind of give you a bit of an idea of the kind of stuff that I like and gear that I've used over the years. So let's go in here and have a look and put together a bass fishing rig. In terms of rods, you know, there's a lot of options out there. I'm kind of partial to the St. Croix rods. This is what I'm going to be picking up today. This is their Mojo Bass. You can get them in a lot of different configurations. This one is a 610 medium light power, extra fast action, and also it'll list on the shank of the rod the weights of lure that is designed to handle, okay? And I'll show you a little trick here as well. So Jacob, take the tip of the rod and just put it on your throat. Now I know this looks weird, but all right, now now talk a little bit. Right. You can feel that. So if you're ever shopping for a rod, if you take like a really cheap rod and do that test, you know, put it on someone's throat and just have them talk. On a really good rod, you can feel every little nuance from the voice box. On a crappy rod, you're not going to feel it quite as much. I feel like the Mojo Bass, this is a great rod, and this one retails for $145. So that's kind of gives you an idea. So we're going to go with the Mojo Bass for our rod, and I think this is about the right setup. Okay, so for reels, the prices can vary a considerable amount, and there's a lot of different options and different brands, and it can be overwhelming. But one thing I'll say is over the years, for freshwater fishing, I prefer the Shimano offerings. They're kind of a medium grade reel. You know, reels can be anywhere from 20-30 bucks on up to, you know, 1,000 or more, depending on which one you get. For saltwater fishing, I've always been partial to pins because I like how well they're sealed, and they hold up really well for saltwater fishing. But for freshwater fishing, especially for bass fishing, I've always preferred the Shimano offerings just because you know, they're sealed. They are sealed reasonably well, but they're made well. They're really rugged. You can drop them down a cliff and they'll always work. And they got really smooth drag, a lot of drag and everything available in terms of the amount of drag power that you have to set the drag. And they're real smooth, you know, real smooth bearings and everything that's in them. And I've just always been partial to Shimano for bass fishing. So I'm probably going to go with this Stratic here. And I know that's kind of a pricey reel, but in comparison, I promise Shimano does make a lot of really high-end stuff that is way more expensive than this. Shimanos are expensive, but I consider them definitely to be the industry standard for bass fishing reels, especially for a spinning reel. Now, a lot of folks will think, you know, maybe running like a bait caster. You can certainly do that. Bait casters have their place, and you can certainly get a lot of finesse and throw a wide variety of different weights of lures and everything, and get some good distance in your casts. But just for ease of use and maintenance, I do prefer the spinning reels probably more than anything else. And you don't have to worry about all the backlash and all that you deal with a bait caster, and they're easier to use. So let's get this out here and get some line on it. All right, real quick, we'll look at some line. So you can see there's a heck of a lot of stuff to choose from, and the options can be overwhelming. You can see they've got it set up by braided line, fluorocarbon down here, and then down on the end you've got monofilament. Fluorocarbon has really good abrasion resistance, and it doesn't stretch as much as a standard monofilament, but I prefer braid because for bass fishing, I fish around a lot of really heavy structure, and you want something that can hold up to nicks and abrasion and also breakage. Now, the nice thing about braid as well that I want to articulate too is that you notice, all right, now this is not what we're going to run. I'm just using this as an example. Notice that this is 50-pound test braid, but it only has the diameter of 12-pound monofilament. So that gives you a lot of flexibility, all right? So in the case of what we're going to run, so you notice here that some of these other skewers are sold out because they're popular for bass fishing. What we'll probably end up running is about a 15-pound or so braid, which will have a monofilament equivalent of considerably less. Like here's a good example. See this suffix here? All right, 2-pound mono equivalent. So the cool thing about that is you can put a heck of a lot of braid on your spool and have much stronger power, but only have the diameter of the monofilament equivalent and still have the strength of the braid. So we're going to run with about a 15-pound. See, there's a 10. All right, you can see 4-pound mono equivalent. So that's what you want to look at. Even that 20 would be fine. In fact, that's probably what we'll run with. Let's go with a 20 and it's only got the equivalent of 6-pound mono. So it's gonna throw really nice. You're gonna get some good distance. And because it's really thin, the fish are not gonna see it as much or anything. It's gonna hide a little bit better. And of course, these come in a variety of different colors, depending on where you're gonna be fishing. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, while Virgil is spooling up our reel over here, we're gonna go over a couple of different lures. I'm a fan of the Rapala Shad Wrap. This is probably one of Rapala's most famous lures. They are kind of pricey. You notice it's an $8 lure, so you definitely don't want to go losing these things. But the Shad Wrap has accounted for more bass, especially, like 2 to 4 pound bass along the edges of a bank or something, than probably any other lure. I think every bass fisherman needs to have a couple of these. They come in different sizes and different patterns, but the one that I've got right here, the shallow runner in the, forget what they call this one. Yeah, the Finnish minnow. What do they call this one? The shad. All right, see, that's the color. This is always a strong bet for your tackle box. Get you a couple of Shad Wraps. Let's look at a couple of other lures. Every bass fisherman needs to have some spinner baits. I'm partial to Strike Kings. I've been using these for years. You notice they come in a couple of different weights. This one's a 3/8 ounce. You've got a 3/16 ounce. Spinner baits are great because they're weedless and you can fish them along heavy structure like lily pads and weeds and things. And all these bass hang out in this really, really deep stuff like that and the real thick stuff. And you can get in there with a spinner bait and really get their attention and make a bunch of racket. You want to fish it kind of fast and rip it and get those blades spinning and splashing in the water, and it just drives them insane. I'd recommend getting some of these big, the 3/8 ounce, I'd recommend getting some of the big 3/8 ounce ones. Get some heavies and get some small ones as well, and try out a few different colors. Now, I'm a really big fan of the Bill Dance Model A Bomber and these bomber lures. Now, I've been told that these are being phased out, but they made I'm pretty sure they do still make, and you can find them, but the crawfish pattern Model A Bomber is definitely a great lure to get a hold of. I'm not as much of a fan of the long A's like these or the shallow A's, but they make one called the Bomber, the Model A Bomber, and that's the one you want to try to find. And unfortunately, I don't see one here. You want to try to find it in a crawfish pattern. That's a great lure. And of course, if you can't find a bomber, there's plenty of other options. You can see here, like, this particular lure has a bit of a crawfish pattern going on. I'd recommend definitely getting something in a crawfish pattern to play around with in some of the ponds. Another bait that I highly recommend are trick worms for soft baits, and I prefer to fish them Carolina style, but you can fish them Texas style, you can fish them wacky style. It's a very versatile worm to use. And look, don't get hung up on all the fancy colors and stuff. Do yourself a favor and pick up some white, black, and pink. Maybe some of these grapes would be fine. The prices on these worms are, reasonably cheap overall, so don't be afraid to experiment with some different colors, but I mean, stick with black and white, like that right there. White trick worm, black trick worm, that's all you need, and run it Carolina style, and you'll be set up for success. Okay, so I had to come over here to the crappie and brim fishing section, and that's where this is related to this video. I like the beetle spins. You can get them in a couple of different sizes, and even though this is a smaller spinner bait, it's still great for bass, and I feel like every bass fisherman needs to have some small jigs. The beetle spins are great, and also just any of the little pre-made jigs, like these guys are good. They work well. So any of this type of stuff, you can get them, with more of like the furry tails, and you can get them with, the ones that are kind of like the plastic worm tails. Those are all great. I've caught huge bass even on these small jigs, and don't overlook them because they do represent a great value, and they're easy to throw, and they're relatively effective for a wide variety of different fish. All right, so Virgil here is ringing us up. We've got our spider wire line, Ultra Cast, that's a 20-pounder. Got it spooled up on a Stratic 4000 XG Shimano. We got our Mojo bass here from St. Croix. Hello, Virgil.
Hey.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate you guys getting this all spooled up here.
We're glad to do it. Glad to do it.
Outstanding. All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this format of video, just kind of off the cuff on my cell phone. That's not typically the type of stuff we do, but I figure some of this information could help out some people that are getting into bass fishing, that, maybe not understand what type of gear to get into or what to look for. A lot of the options can be overwhelming. Some people may not be able to articulate why things are expensive or cheap. Hopefully this helped some of you out a little bit. So have a good day. Many more videos on the way, and maybe we'll see if we can reel in a couple of bass with this rig and film a video or something. Have a good one.